Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Guy Gray. Welcome to Thriving Adoptees, Guy. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. So this is the first podcast that Guy's done. So I'm honoured to be your first host, Guy.
I am as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's all. Yeah, you're in safe hands because. It may be your first, but I think it's my 422nd or something like that. So I've done quite a few of these. Guy, Guy has just done just released a book with a birth mum listeners, and a guy got in touch and asked if I'd be interested in having him on the show. And I said, yes, certainly. And I'd love to talk healing with you, so because that's what we're focusing in now on the Thriving Adoptees podcast. It's helping adoptees heal, sharing what we've learned that's helped us heal, or what we are learning to help us heal. So everybody's got a different take on healing, and I think it's one of those words that's used a lot, and it means very different things to different people. So what does it mean to you, Guy?
Well, it has a little bit difference depending on what the need is. I had a really hard story, and so parts of the need were really big, and then there's things that come up day to day that are smaller, that require less impact or less things on that. And one of the things that helps me on my own more than anything else is when I can fix my own problems. And one of the examples of that is there's like 3 or 4 sayings that I have that I repeat to myself, and sometimes I say, oh, wait a minute, I'm going way down on a tangent and I shouldn't be there. And so I am able to say, I'm not going to pursue this anymore, even though it's got me all fired up.
Okay, so you're catching yourself going off course and kind of reining yourself back in, yeah?
That's correct. And when I can do that on my own, that is really helpful, because it's sort of like if you talk to somebody that's got a problem, he's got a problem, he needs to fix it, he's got to go do all this, he doesn't want to, okay, or whatever like that. But if it's me looking at myself, if I can see the problem and I can also see based on my own desires of something that I've said, or something that I know to be the direction I want to go, if I'm not going in that direction, I can fix that right away. And that's the easiest and best tool or technique that I have for healing, for especially for small problems. If I just something gets me all fired up and then I need to fix that, then I can go take care of that fairly quickly.
What about the deeper stuff, Guy? On Thriving Adoptees, we kind of like to go deep because that's where all the treasure's buried, right? In terms of our wisdom. What's helped you heal from the bigger stuff?
The story was when I contacted my birth mother, it went way bad, way fast, and I was completely not expecting that, and I was completely caught off guard, and felt like I was falling and falling and falling, and there was no catcher's mitt to stop me from falling. I just felt like I was just going downhill, and I couldn't fix it. And I talked to a friend of mine whose father was associated with this church, and I wasn't going to church at that time. And I told my friend, I'd like to talk to your father. And his father happened to be a lawyer, and that happened to be a type of person I was thinking that if things go bad enough, maybe I need one of them too. So I went and talked to him, and he told me that in his church there was a woman who had placed a child for adoption, and she was giving speeches about her experience. And so I, through him, met her, and we got together and started understanding her a little bit. And the really important thing is we both had assumptions about the other side, the adoptee about the birth mother and the birth mother about the adoptee. The assumptions were just way wrong. And it was very powerful to hear that voice tell me, yeah, your birth mother remembers you, and the way that you contacted her was probably shocking, and you're going to have to give this a break, give this a rest. And so being able to talk to somebody who was in that experience to give me the hands-on view from somebody that knew what I was talking about was very useful for me.
Yeah. So what were the assumptions that you had?
Well, the first assumption is, did she even remember me? Do you even think about me? And um, um, things like, well, when you placed me for adoption, it was because I was no good or you didn't want me. It was a lot of um, um, things along the lines of me not having value, or she not having any concern at all for me.
Wow. Yeah. So those assumptions, you were off the mark. That's what you discovered by talking to this other birth mother. You just
Yeah.
that you were off the mark.
Later on in her story, when she did meet her son, she was crying nonstop for 5 hours. And it's like, well, I think she did remember him, and I think he was important.
Yeah.
And so it was totally validating that I was completely wrong in my assumption.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience, actually. Yeah. I had a similar experience. So we're going through life, and we've got these thoughts, and we've got these beliefs, and we've got these assumptions about our birth mothers, and we kind of like, we're holding on to them, we're believing them to be true, and then they get completely blown out of the water. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what I experienced. Yes, is when I was able to talk to a birth mother, my assumptions were completely wrong, and the fact that my introduction to her life was like a bull in a china shop caused me to realize that whatever I do is only going to work is if I'm very soft spoken and very soft in my movements, and do not push hard.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you realized that you were way off the mark, what impact did that have on you and how you feel?
Um, we had, or I had attempted some correspondence that wasn't working and stuff like that, and it was just fueling anger and stuff like that. And at one point, I wrote a letter and saying, um, whether or not we ever meet, I want us to be on good terms with each other. And that was validating for me because it drew a line in the sand that I wasn't going to cross. And it also probably let her know something in a good way, that, oh, we don't have to fight each other. And also something came up in me that caused me to think that, you know what, with all of this that has been going on, I've got some pent up anger somewhere that hasn't been dealt with. And I came to the conclusion that I needed to forgive my birth mother of anything that was associated with what was going on from my past. And that was very healing.
Yeah. So the anger's diminished, gone on the way out. What's happened to the anger?
I, I would say generally gone. I just had a birthday and emotions came up, but you know what? I wasn't really angry uh, because of that. It's just like, well, I'm feeling abandoned again. It doesn't mean that I'm angry at my birth mother for that, but um, it used to be. It used to be it was her fault. Now it's not.
So you kind of like stop blaming her.
Right. There's no blame anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And what impact has that had on you?
Um, I've been one of the healing techniques that I used was my wife and I go out and take photography all the time, and I love doing that. We go out in nature and take pictures and stuff like that, and that helps a lot. But getting all the anger out in other things, I see other people. I know one, in fact, that's an adoptee. He's really having issues with anger, and I'm not. And it's like if you look at a couple of flowers, one of them has pretty petals on it, one of them shriveled up. I'm not the shriveled up one.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got a bench.
I feel a healthy outlook.
You have a healthy outlook. And what does that mean? How's that impacted? What does that mean for you? How's that impacted your life?
Most of the time, I do things in an effort to help other people. I've done a lot of work helping the homeless. I've done lot of work helping my kids and my nieces and my nephews and stuff like that in trying to uh, put them on the right course. And it's very soothing to help others. And it makes it so that if you do have problems, you can say, hey, my problems are low compared to what I'm looking at.
Yeah. So you talked about the fact that the timeline. You said something about 20 years. Is it 20 years since this? Since you had this realization that that your assumptions were off. Is that right?
I contacted my birth mother in 1990, and I met the other birth mother, who's a friend of mine,
Yeah.
The next day. So it's actually been 33 years.
33 years. Wow.
And I didn't realize everything all at once, but over time, it's things have been coming to me. Like when we first started talking, she said, "Oh no," to a whole bunch of the things that I started saying. But the thing about letting the anger go, that was about 20 years ago.
Wow. And presumably had you been feeling that most of your life until that point, or had it been there and gone, or what was life like before?
Well, the anger was a hidden thing, and my wife knew about it, but I didn't know about it. And she would tell me that I was doing these things and not really realizing it. And then the thing with adoption anger is if I tried to do something with my birth mother, I'd be going, okay, this is good, 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 good. And then at the very end, I would explode and things wouldn't work. And the nature of never being able to be successful in attempting to make contact with her was all because of anger, and it was hidden until it exploded. And then same thing with uh, when I forgave her, I was able to make contact, and we were able to talk very well with each other without ever experiencing anger at all.
Yeah.
And so the anger was 100% gone at the end of the story.
Yeah. Why do you think that was?
Um, um, the co-author of my book had people come into her house and murder her husband. And at the end of the day, when they had been arrested and put in jail and put in prison, she went and contacted each of them and forgave them. And her ability to forgive them, and she said she did it for herself. She didn't do it for them. She said, I need that anger out of my system. And I realized, hey, I still have anger in me. And she turned on a light inside of me that said, hey, I've got my own anger to deal with. And she was able to forgive them and move on. And I figured I needed to forgive my birth mother and move on.
Wow. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, you should read my book.
Yeah. 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 So she kind of led by example.
Huh?
She led by example. She gave
Yeah.
you an example.
Oh, exactly. It was I could see in her life what she did and what it did for her. And then I thought, you know what? I don't care what this does for my birth mother. I need to forgive her so that I can be clean inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it helped a lot with my relationship with other people.
Yeah. But you said that the anger before had been invisible to you, but it was visible to your wife. Yeah.
It was visible to my wife, visible to my kids, and I was pretty calm most of the time, but when I had a problem, it was explosive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I can definitely relate to that. Yeah. Can relate to that. I think a lot of us can relate to that
Yeah.
as adoptees. What what do you think was behind the anger?
Um, I think that at least if you take my story from the very beginning, everything was all her fault. All of this happened, and she did this to me, and she shouldn't have done that to me. That was the initial feeling, and she was an educated person, and my birth father had some success in his life, and it didn't seem to me that there was a reason to place me for adoption. And of course, it was a closed adoption, and I knew very little about them, but I did know that she was educated and that he had was working within a profession, and I didn't understand why, and I was never given any information why, and I just thought there's no reason for this. I don't understand it, and I don't approve of it.
Right. Okay. And did you? What about your adoptive parents? How was your experience with them?
They were always supportive. They were a very good family. One of the problems that I had is when I was told that I was adopted, I didn't want to believe it, and I was a little bit angry just finding out that I had actually proved that I had a birth mother because I had a person there, which validated the fact that they told me I was adopted. Yes, you are in fact adopted. Here's the mother to prove it. And same thing when I found information about my birth father. When I found here's a real person, he's the one that it is. Once again, you're absolutely adopted. He's not your adopted father is not your real father, and I was very close to them, and I didn't want what had been told to me to be the truth, but they were very supportive. And when I did decide to search, that was fine. Um, my adopted mother was somewhat fearful from way back when that my birth mother was going to come after me and take me back into her family. which under the light of reality was completely the opposite of what really happened, because she was not prepared to have me introduce myself to her or her family. But when I didn't make contact, my mother's adopted mother's fears were realized, but sort of backwards, because of my birth mother was not the one seeking the relationship. I was, and I was very upset that it didn't go the way I wanted. And she supported that, was afraid of it at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Have you heard this sort of stuff related to grief at all?
Yes. Um, and the adoption process is similar to a death, but it's also similar to an amputation, a psychological amputation. It's also a physical amputation. You're physically removed from somebody. And I think that there's quite a bit of similarity between that and the experience of death, except for death. Usually you move on, but when you're told you're adopted and you don't get the whole story, you get to live with it for the rest of your life. So it's the death feelings that never go away.
Yeah, but they have for you somewhere, I think.
They have now that I've discovered everything and been able to dispel a lot of my feelings that I now realize were not really the case. And I was able to forgive my birth mother and able to meet her, able to talk to her, and that has made a lot of that no longer applies.
Yeah, yeah. So you talked a lot in the email. In the email, you talked a lot about brokenness. Can you share us a little bit of that? Share a little bit more about that?
I sort of feel that when you're given up for adoption, and this is on both sides, the adoptee and the birth mother, that it's a physical and emotional amputation. And that amputation is an example of a severe example of being broken, because if you break your arm, it heals back. But if you amputate something, that part's just flat gone. And the reuniting the with my birth mother was more in line with a transplant. I had a friend who, when I was 18, who needed a heart transplant, and he actually did get a heart transplant. And then he had to deal with the rejection of the foreign heart not being accepted, and that's sort of what I felt like with my birth mother. I was broken through the adoption. It was an amputation, and I tried to reunite with her, which was trying to put the pieces back together, and they didn't really fit the way that I had hoped they did, because of the rejection piece was not really resolved.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that rejection piece now?
Well, the fact that I had a friend that had a transplant and had to deal with the physical rejection, and I could see that uh, helped me a lot, because I felt that when I tried to meet my birth mother and was unsuccessful. I totally felt, wow, I'm being rejected and I'm having to deal with this. And it's not exactly the same as my friend with his transplant, but it's enough of the same that I see the trying to get back together and the rejection is something that um, maybe if you could find a way to do some healing, you could make that rejection go away. And actually, that's what I worked on a lot, was how do you unreject once you're rejected, because there's no pills that you can take or cream that you can put on that makes an emotional rejection like what you experience in adoption go away, like there might be if you have a heart transplant, and they can either give you a shot or a pill or whatever they have to do. They can do something there, but the adoption rejection, you have to find a way to deal with that in a different way.
Yeah. But it seems like the some of the anger, as the anger dispelled, that led to a better relationship with her.
The anger dispelling enabled me to have a relationship, because until then, things would be good and I would explode when things got too close. In other words, we'd get to a certain degree of closeness and then I'd just make it fail. And there was quite a bit of sense that she was willing but not willing to deal with the explosive anger.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like is it the insights that you've had that have changed? You know, you've seen these parallels, you've seen other people's perspectives, and that seems to be the thing that has helped you.
It's helped a lot to say this person has a life story that I can relate to, and and it doesn't mean that I can take care of it right now this minute, because it took me from the time that I contacted my birth mother until I met her the first time, it was 16 years. And by the time we had had a one-on-one conversation where where we were talking to each other and the only ones in the room, that was another 6 years. So it was 22 years before I had a healthy conversation with her.
Wow.
And the things that I heard from other people were very, or learned from other people were very pivotal on getting me to where I finally wound up.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like you took a really long, patient and persistent track on this. Yeah.
Yeah, it was extremely persistent. And my thing that I learned that I kept saying about my path is that I'm changing the course of the tide with the force of a feather. And if you think of how strong a feather is and how strong the tide is, if you're changing the tide, it's a big thing. And if you're pushing it with a feather, that's a little thing. And so it's going to take a long time to get what you need. And that's where I was with that journey.
Yeah. And was it front of your mind all the time, this stuff? Because it's.
I'm sorry?
Was it front of mind?
No, in the beginning is this failed, I want to fix it now. And why can't I fix it now? And so it took several years before I understood that the fix it now thing was never going to be the source of success. It took at least 5 years before I could say, this is going to take a while. And if I'm going to have any success, and I didn't know if I would or not, if I'm going to get any success out of this, it's got to be in the long run.
Yeah. And so I didn't ask the question quite right. Was your relationship with your birth mother and the need to fix that, was that on your mind all the time? Was it, or was it, did it come and go? You put it on the back burner and say, right, I'm gonna forget about this reunification for a while. It's getting me down. I need to put it to one side. Did it go on the back burner, or was it more like a thing that was constantly on your mind?
Well, it was constantly on my mind, and when I came to the realization that I needed to put it on a back burner, I got a job that required me to travel all over the place. And when I was traveling, I was by myself, and I was busy enough so that I had work things to do. And then later I got another job that didn't have the traveling, but it was all encompassing. I was work, 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 and I didn't have time for much else. And then when I stopped doing that, I started helping the homeless and focusing on the needs of other people. And I was able to get to a point to where the needs of other people were the focus and not my needs.
Yeah. So initially it was a distraction thing. Fill
Yes.
fill your life with busyness
Yes.
to distract yourself from the pain.
Yeah,
And
and that was after maybe 5 years of just constantly dealing with this, and so it was uh, very destructive until I started uh, medicating with work,
yeah,
which was very destructive on my life, which got better when I started helping the homeless.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Sounds like you've been really through the mill on this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long process and painful process.
Yeah. So what led you to come up with the idea of writing the book?
Um, I had retired from teaching. I was a school teacher teaching high school math, and I'd retired from teaching, and it was during the pandemic, and so you really couldn't associate with people that much at this time. And I was going to a coffee shop regularly, and I had to sit outside with a mask on to talk to people. And so I was talking to people 3 or 4 days a week, and it's usually the same people. And we started telling stories to each other, and I told several stories, and one of the people that were there said, "Wow, you should write a book." And it took me several months to figure out what book I wanted to write because I had told her all kinds of different stories. And then I said, "Well, my adoption is the beginning of my story, so I think that I need to start with the adoption." And so that's where the idea of writing a book about adoption came from.
Yeah. And at some point, you thought it would be more fun to do this in a collaboration with the birth mother, or what happened there?
Well, I was had my own story, and I knew that it was a good story. But the way that my story rolled out, all of the events in my story were uh, often centered around this particular birth mother. And it's like, you know what? I really can't tell my story unless I also enable her to tell her story because I'm referring to this other person over and over again. And so I said, "Why don't we write a book?" I called her up. I said, "Why don't we write a book?" And she said, "Yes." And so then we got started. And the book is our journey over 32 years, um, uh, exchanging voices as we tell our own story during that time,
Yeah,
going from then until now.
yeah. And you did you, if I remember rightly from the emails, you met your birth mother just before she died. Is that right?
I met her in 2006, and she died in 2012. And for 2 weeks, right before she died, I had one-on-one contact with her where I was the only one talking to her. And she was fascinated about our conversation, and we talked to each other for about an hour every day. Well, I met her 5 times over 2 weeks, and each of the 5 times I talked to her for close to an hour, and they were very uplifting and peaceful conversations.
Yeah, yeah. What was her take on um, the change in you?
Um, at one point during those 5 days, one of her friends came and visited me, and I watched them talk to each other, and my birth mother had said something about being afraid because of me being angry, and then she was looking at me and saying, "It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with him now," and she says, "No, there's not." And so she had uh, acknowledged that to her friend, but she really didn't talk to me about that. And even I think this was like the second day before she passed on. Um, one of the nurses in the nursing home came in and asked me um, if that was my mother, and I shook my head yes. And then the nurse went and talked to her and said, "Isn't it nice that your son is coming to visit you?" And her response was, "He's not my son. He's just a really good friend." And so, even at the very end of her life, she had something that needed to be kept private from a nurse. And it was just a strange thing that she couldn't open up
Dan,
even at that late date.
what do you think that might have been?
Um, I think that she had been extremely shamed by her mother when she got pregnant, and had felt that no matter what, this is not something we talk about, and this is never going to come back and haunt you or whatever, and you just need to forget about this and just disassociate with this person that you're giving up.
Yeah, yeah. I spoke to a Canadian adoptee, and her birth mother wouldn't admit it to her. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
your birth mother was concerned about concerned, denying it to the nurse, but
Yeah,
what was confirming, agreeing with it, admitting to you. But this Canadian birth mother couldn't admit it to her own daughter.
right.
Yeah. So
Well, between me and my birth mother, she never told me that she was my birth mother. She never acknowledged it with words.
oh right, sorry. I
Yeah,
was
yeah. I did. She had a son and two daughters, and then I had an aunt and an uncle that talked to her, and so it was very clear that she admitted it. But in our one-on-one conversations, that never came up as something that was um, that open.
yeah.
And strangely enough, on the very last few minutes that we talked on the day that she died, she told me she wanted me to bring my wife to come see her at the nursing home the next time that I visited, which was uh, very healing to me and very rewarding to know that she was ready to open up a little bit, but she wasn't willing to open up all the way yet.
No, no, not quite. No. Wow. Just going back to the book then. So the book, how does it work with this birth mother, your friend telling her story and you telling your story? Are they kind of like sequential chapters? Is it
There's it's a short book, so there's not a lot of meat to it, but there's a lot of emotion in it. And the first chapter is me introducing, talking to her son in an open letter, saying, "This is how I met your mother," because she did contact her son, who had she had placed for adoption, and so the first chapter is me introducing the story by saying, "This is how I met your mother," and the next three chapters is her telling her story, and then the chapter after that, that'd be chapter 5. I'm talking about the 16 years that transpired from the time that I had met this or this birth mother until I had actually had first contact with my birth mother 16 years later. And then the chapter after that, I'm talking about how um, what it was like during the last 2 weeks where I was actually having a one-on-one conversation with
Yeah.
my birth mother for the first time, and that was right before she had died. And then there's 2 chapters after that where we're just wrapping things up.
And so, talking about wrapping things up, is there anything that you'd like to share before we wrap our conversation up, Dan?
I think that a lot of adoptees, whether they're searching or not, have never talked to a birth mother, and it's very eye-opening if they're able to do that, especially if they're able to talk to a birth mother who's willing to share, because a lot of times that's not the case. And the same thing with a birth mother. It's very eye-opening if you're able to talk to an adoptee who's willing to share. You'll learn a lot of things that you weren't expecting. And the very first birth mother I ever talked to was the birth mother who was I co-wrote the book with, and the very first adoptee she'd ever talked to was me.
Yeah.
And so we ended up being pivotal parts of each other's success story because of what we knew from the other side. And so people will tell you to go to ancestry.com and get your DNA test results so that you can find somebody. But it's really valuable to know some of the background of people from the other side, so that you can get rid of some of your misconceptions. And that's where I think the book has some values. You can see, oh, there's my misconception right there.
Yeah, indeed. So we've had a few birth mothers on the show, guys. So I will put some links into. I will put some links in the show notes so that listeners can listen to some interviews with birth mothers, and because I think that's another way to get an insight. It's in no way is as rich as the insights you get from a face-to-face conversation or a one-to-one conversation. It goes some way, and maybe they can get in touch with the birth mothers through.
Well, adoptees and birth mothers, now that we got the internet going, that they didn't always have that.
Yeah.
But it's easy to find people. I mean, if you want to talk to a birth mother, it'd take you 30 seconds to find one. Or if you want to talk to an adoptee, they're not hard to find. It might be a little harder to find one that is the right person for you to talk to, but they're definitely out there.
Yeah, cool. Great advice, Guy. Thank you very much for sharing so much, and really appreciated your time today. And thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.
And thank you as well. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Guy.